my home is my mission field. That is the most important place that I'm ever going to be an influence at. That's the place that I'm going to be held accountable for. So whether it's homeschooling or homesteading, everything I'm doing, like you said, I'm an example to the kids. But the realization that I'm the mom and the example now, it's very humbling to be like, oh, I'm the influence. I'm the one that's going to mold these little people, and you can't do it on your own. I have to lean solely onto the Lord in every single aspect of how I handle myself and what's wise for our family. Being that influence on them and being that example has been like the biggest lesson I've learned.
Welcome to the Paintbrush Prairie podcast. I'm Kinsey Ashcraft, a boutique owner, firefighter wife, and mama of 2 cowgirls, homesteading on a cattle ranch in Oklahoma.
And I'm Talia, a Western artist and illustrator, mama of 2, and wife of a mountain man, raising babies in the mountains of Utah.
Together, we share a passion for the Western lifestyle, homemaking, and Indian paintbrush flowers.
We're here to inspire and encourage you as we each create a simple but beautiful life on the prairie.
Welcome to another guest episode of our Tell Your Story series. Today, we are so excited to have Chelsea from Pasture, Petals on the show. Chelsea is a wife, mom, RN turned flower farmer, homeschooling and homesteading in Oklahoma. And we are so excited to have her on the show today. Chelsea, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be on your show. Like, this is the exact podcast that me and many of my friends have been waiting for. Homeschooling, homesteading mamas that are also, working either inside the home or outside the home. So you guys have fit that niche perfectly. So I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you.
I love hearing that. That's like the best compliment because we're just trying to be relatable and reach some people that we can call our friends. Sometimes it gets
Right.
a little bit lonely, when you're like the only person that homeschools or, that lives agriculturally or whatever it happens to be. And so it's nice to have some other people to connect to. So I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So we're going to just kind of go ahead and kick this off. Why don't you tell us your story and give us your background? Kind of where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a farming or homesteading environment? Just kind of give us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I am married to my wonderful husband. We have 3 kiddos, ranging from 6 to 5 weeks old. So if I say anything funny, it's because I still have a newborn brain. But we live west of Tulsa in Creek County. I didn't really grow up on an ag like operation per se, but we live in an area that would be considered like urban rural. So everyone owns like 5 to 10 acres. More than that, you're pretty fancy. And so if you keep going further west, you get more and larger plots of land. But everyone kind of just like fits what they can on their little spot of land. And so I was actually homeschooled as well, 4th grade all the way through. So we were at home a lot. We did lots of DIY house projects, like before Chip and Joanna were the way to go. So that was part of a homeschool curriculum. But my dad used to travel. He's a welder. He would travel. We would go with him. And so we traveled a lot around the U.S. And then when we got older, playing baseball and softball all the time. But agriculturally didn't really start as much until we started 4-H. And I was like in 8th or 9th grade then. And at that point, we just did like archery and speeches. And I wasn't even a fan of the speeches. They're like, come on, you should do it. It'll be so much fun. But now I'm the person that says, hey, like speeches in 4-H has influenced every single area of my whole life. Like being an RN, you're giving a speech in a patient room. Here I am now, teaching at church, whatever. Like you're all the time giving a speech. And so I showed a goat one time. It's because I was Creek County president. I was the 4-H president and was like, oh, I need to show a goat for my constituents because I haven't experienced that. Like I've never walked in their shoes. So I did that and it was a lot of fun. My goat did fantastic until showmanship, of course. And then
Of
she
course.
she started being a rear, so I think I ended up getting like fifth or sixth place in that. But my favorite part of being a county officer was the spring livestock show because I was
Mhm.
homeschooled, so I was home all week long. So I
Oh,
would be up there and I
Yeah.
handed out ribbons and I loved every single moment of it. And so I'm really excited for our kids to be able to do that. We did raise a pig to butcher once. So that was a good life experience.
yeah.
I was the only one, my dad and I were the only ones that would eat the meat. But, we learned those life lessons. Let's see. So I think that's really like the biggest part of like ag growing up. Like those were my influences. My grandparents on both sides, everybody had a garden, always
Yep.
canning, always. But yeah, we just had they instilled that have a respect for ag. Both sides of the family, grandparents were told leave the big city or leave the small
Mhm.
town, go to the big city, be successful there. And so if there was anyone moving cows or doing this, they would be call up and be like, yeah, let's go do that. But as far as like having our own operations, we never really did that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I feel like too, just being a fellow Oklahoman as well, like even if you didn't have that, you still lived a pretty rural life because Oklahoma is just a very rural state. So
Right,
you're
right.
around it whether you like it or not.
Yes.
That is one thing I notice when I have been to Oklahoma is just like even if you know, live on a quarter of an acre, it seems like you're still like surrounded by farmland or even if you yourself don't have it, like it's it's like I don't know, it's just totally different than here. Like there are people here where it's like they grow up in the city and they are city like through and through, and some of them have never even been outside of the city, but I feel like Oklahoma is just like you can't get anywhere without like driving through a ton of rural areas.
Right. And what cracks me up is a lot of our universities, it doesn't take very many miles for you to just be in farmland. Like
Mhm.
OU, OSU, especially. I went to Southwestern, like, especially the small universities, like, you are in the middle of it.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
everyone gets a little taste of it.
That's awesome. So you did 4-H, did you do FFA too?
No. So since I was homeschooled, FFA is only in our public schools.
Okay.
So, but that also opens up a lot of opportunities for scholarships because there's normally not that many high schoolers in 4-H because once you get up to a certain age, it's kind of hard. Like
Moved to
if you,
FFA.
right,
Yeah.
like either you're going to do like state record, but kind of in 4-H, or you're going to do like your FFA degree. Like it gets really complicated and you kind of have to choose. Some people can juggle both, but you kind of pick like which one's going to be your main one.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So you talked a little bit about like, your influences through 4-H and some things like that. What were some other big influences that you had like growing up? Like is there um like certain experiences or certain people that really influenced you?
Being homeschooled, it was most definitely my parents.
Mhm.
We got to see a lot of them growing up as well as
Yep.
growing. I mean, that growth and
Yeah.
maturity, doing the hard things, teaching us how to do the hard things. Like I said, I mean, like you do a renovation on a house and you learn a lot about everyone around you.
Yeah.
And
It's like
so,
working it's like working cows.
yes, right. So they were our biggest influence. And then, of course, my brothers. I have two younger brothers. They influenced me a ton. And then, my parents, they now own their own business. It's actually the same welding shop that my dad worked in my whole life. And so now they own it.
Oh.
And so they're entrepreneurs and they took that leap of faith. And so when it came time to do that with this little flower farm thing, then I was like, yeah, it's not a huge corporation like what they're working on. And so they did that. And then being homeschooled as well, we spent a ton of time with our grandparents. I mean, like we had
Yeah.
specific days that we would go to like dad's side of the family, and we would spend time with grandma and papa. And then that side of the family is they came over on the Trail of Tears. So like hunting and fishing, like hunters and gatherers, was really important to that side of the family. And so it didn't matter like boy or girl, everyone was hunting. And so that's where like archery came into play. And of course, like canning and cooking. And then Grandma Dolores had her beautiful flower beds everywhere. Like almost every tree had a little something around it. And then on mom's side of the family, they actually came over like fresh off the boat from England, went to the land run in Stillwater, and the homestead house is still standing on family land out there. And so,
Wow.
with that side of the family, everyone had a garden. And then, but they really focused on crafts like sewing. That's like that family, that's their niche. Every Tuesday is quilting. So we go over with Meemaw and all the great aunts, and we would learn how to quilt and sew, and like mom made all of our Halloween costumes, and so I mean our big influences were a lot of the older generations in our family,
Mm.
and that really molded us and shaped us. We would get the compliment all the time. It's like, you can't talk to younger kids normally, and like you guys can have a conversation with a grown adult, and you do well with that. And so I feel like that has a lot to do with our upbringing, being around those older generations.
Yeah, that is so special. And I think it's so important because, and, you know, people like to focus so much on like, oh, your kids need to be around kids their age and their peers and stuff. But it's like that actually doesn't help them grow. Like, yeah, they might be able to relate to those kids, but it doesn't push them or have them like rise, like when you're learning from people who are older than you and who are more experienced than you, and they're teaching you all of these skills and introducing you to these things that you don't know about, that's really when you grow and you develop and you learn. And I think that that is one of the coolest things about homeschool and being homeschooled, and just being able to give kids that, like, those family connections, which I feel like that was the way it used to be, right? Everyone kind of
Mhm.
learned from their grandmas and grandpas, and like things are handed down through the generations, and now we've kind of lost a lot of that. So that's really cool that you were able to like be exposed to all of those things growing up.
Right. And I mean, like I said, we played ball, we did 4-H, we had church, um, and other than the challenging things we had to do in 4-H, like putting ourselves out there, for positions and speeches and showmanship and things like that. I mean, really was the older generations that influenced us, and it gave us the confidence to do the hard things. Like I started a Christian sorority at Southwestern Oklahoma State University because that was something they needed on campus, and that was the hard thing. But I don't know, I just had this like faith in the Lord and confidence, and you could do the hard thing, and you could be embarrassed if you were to be embarrassed. And there's going to be people around you that are like-minded. I was never scared to find like-minded people, and I'm really thankful for that.
So, tell us a little bit about your family now, your little family with your husband and your kids, and life in Oklahoma.
Well, my husband, he's a welder, works for my parents. He doesn't do all the traveling that my dad did because he loves being home with us.
Mhm.
And we have our little piece of land, and it's like less than half a mile, like catty cornered away from my parents where I grew up. So like the kids get to ride their bikes down there. Um, and then, or it first started with the little, Power Wheels John Deere tractor went driving down the driveway. I'm going to Pawpaw's. um, and so we just live on our little piece of land. And my husband is also a big hunter. And so where we grow the flowers used to be his like babied food plot. When I decided I was going to do this flower thing, he's like, okay, fine. Like, if you're really going to do this, then you need to do it on good ground. And
Mhm.
he had been like babying this area and just really took wonderful care of it. And I even had to go to like a soil workshop to realize like, oh, okay, he does know what he's doing. Because they told us to plant a cover crop that was exactly what he was planting. So I'm like, okay, fine. And so we have that little area that he opens up for deer in the fall with our cover crop. And for him, like, and also me, really cool to like harvest a deer on your own land. I don't know, it's
Mhm.
a different sense of accomplishment there. And we homeschool our 4-year-old and 6-year-old. Our oldest, he's a little bit hyperactive. We've worked on it a lot, done a lot of neurofeedback therapy and vitamins and things, and so we just felt like that was important for him because if he was in a school setting, he would be in trouble. Like he could not sit in that
Mhm.
desk all the time. But if it's just me and him, like we can knock out his stuff in like 45 minutes to an hour if we did it all the way through. But a lot of times we just break it up throughout the day.
Mhm.
And then our 4-year-old, she's just like the most studious little thing. She'll just get her papers and go sit down and do them and ask me a question if she has them. And then we have our new addition, our little 5-week-old. And so she's been exactly what we've needed. It's kind of caused a little bit of calm down in our oldest and
Mhm.
realizing, oh, wait, sisters are like kind of dainty and delicate and need to be taken care of. Um, and so he's learning that because the oldest, they're just 20 months apart. So he
Mm.
was not mature
Oh,
enough to
yeah.
realize any of that. So he's kind of realizing that. And it's kind of funny when we started the flower farm, I came home from the hospital, was like, I gotta be home. Like he needs me. He was having some behavioral issues, and that's before we knew about like dyes and preservatives, artificial flavors, all that fun stuff. Because the little preschool was like, oh, it's after snack time. He just can't control himself. And
Mm.
it took a year before I realized, oh, wait, that's exactly what the problem was.
Right.
But he also, we had helped my parents foster some of my distant cousins. And so it was like 5 under 5 for a whole year. And it was basically like 2 sets of twins. We had a potty training set of twins, and then we had a newborn set of twins.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
it was a lot, but it worked out really well. They were adopted by some family friends and have a wonderful life. But it was hard on my oldest. He started getting really hysterical when I would leave to go to work. I remember the night before I decided I was going to quit, all I did was just move my keys, and he heard them and came bawling like out of his room. Was like, "Don't leave! Don't leave! Don't leave!" And he would also say, "When's sister going to go to her forever home?" I'm like, "Well, we are.
Oh.
We're sisters forever." He just didn't register like, "Oh, wait, like she belongs to us." And so I came home to help heal our relationship a little bit and to help him try to navigate like what is happening with him, and then help heal like his relationship with his sister. And so we've been doing that for the past 4 years now, and it's fantastic. I don't work at the hospital anymore, but um, I am working at Oral Roberts University and I do clinicals, and it's just like a half a day a week or a whole day a week. And then I have to grade, which means I have homework too. That's like the hardest part of the job.
Mm.
But I love the discussions with them and watching their minds work and just like clicking as like how amazing our body is. I mean, I just love the human body. It's an amazing creation. And to see that spark in these students is really amazing. And to see their heart for caring for other people is really awesome. And so my mom will watch the kids when I go to work, and we just like do our little life up here on the hill. We live on this hill and we're just up here on the hill all the time. And the kids want more animals and such, and we have more fence to build and things to get that going. But that's just what we do.
I love that. And it's so encouraging to me, Chelsea, because you've been homeschooled. Um, our generation, most everyone was in public school.
Hmm.
And so we didn't know a lot of homeschool kids. And to hear your story, and now that you're carrying that on with your kids, that you had such a positive experience with yourself, that you're doing it with your own children, like that just encourages me so much. Because sometimes I do second guess, like, I never want to put them back in public school and I don't want to go back there. But sometimes I'm like, am I doing right by them? Am I going to be good enough to like carry this all the way through? So I just love hearing that from you.
Yeah, and I mean it's amazing because people like have like they're not going to be successful in life, and
Yeah.
my brothers and I, we all have college degrees, and that's not the most important thing in the world. Like there's very successful people who don't have those, and so we all have those. And my oldest brother, middle brother, he was the student body president at OSU. So I
Yeah.
mean, that came from his 4-H experience and his experience being
Mm-hmm.
able to talk to people and older people. And so, uh, yeah, I love to share that with people that are homeschooling. And I even have doubts too. Like there are days where I'm like, oh my gosh, are we ever
We
going to
all do.
survive? Like there's those hard days. And it's like, okay, you know what? What we're gonna do is we're gonna go outside, or we're gonna take a bath, or get in the pool. Like we're gonna change the scenery, and then we're gonna come back, and it's all gonna be okay. It's all gonna be
Yeah.
fine. And I think about like, I told my husband once, I was like, I'm pretty sure like Almanzo didn't even go to school till he was like 9 or 8 years old. Like I
Yeah.
think it's in the
Exactly.
book. Like we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Or like our great grandparents who like got out of school at like 8th grade because they had to
Hmm.
help take care of the farm or they went to
Yeah.
war. So I always try to remember those little things. Like it's not the only way. There are multiple ways to skin a cat. That's what my papa used to say.
Right.
Well, not only
Yeah.
that, but
But
like how many people do you know that like went through all the schooling and everything and they cannot get up in front of people and talk, and they're not good leaders, or they don't have any skills, right? Like
Hmm.
maybe they got straight A's, but like they don't have any life skills. And for me, it's like there has to be some kind of a balance, because like you grow up and you go through life, and if all you do is like, standard bookwork, and all you do is become very academic, it doesn't really help you out a whole lot in like real life.
mhm.
And plus like the 4-H and, like learning those speaking skills, that is something they don't really do a whole lot of in public school. So I think that that's really great.
Well, and I think too, like 4 H, because I was involved since you could get in it all the way through high school. My kids are in 4 H now. And I truly believe it's like one of the best organizations you could ever be a part of because there are so many different things that you can be involved in. It's not just about animals or agriculture. Like you said, there's public speaking, there's archery, there's sewing. I mean, literally anything that you want to do or have a life skill in, you can do that in 4 H. And it benefits you forever.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that's such, for any of our listeners, that's such an encouragement to hear your story and how big of an impact 4-H has been in your life to check it out for themselves if they're not involved.
Right. And I mean, when we joined 4-H, we didn't have like a project area in mind.
Mhm.
I think basically I was kind of looking at sewing because that's what my family did. But then they opened that archery club, and that's when my brothers became involved. And I mean, it really, I think there's a lot in STEM now. There's a lot of like of
Mhm.
robotics and things like that. And you do competitions, and so you master that skill no matter what it is. In every single project area, there's always some type of competition or enter it in the fair. And so you become better and better at what you're doing.
Mhm.
All right. Well, you basically answered the next question.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your flower farm. How did you start and what inspired you? And kind of tell us how you are running it.
Okay, so in 2021, it was a couple months before I left the hospital. I hadn't even been thinking of not working at the hospital anymore. But I don't know, I just kind of went to my mom and was like, hey, who grows the flowers? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, like, there's got to be a flower farmer, right? And I didn't know that Floret was even a thing. I don't know how I existed like on social media and didn't know that Floret was a thing. But I just didn't. But I was like, somebody's got to grow the flowers. Like, who does that? Like, wouldn't that be the coolest thing ever? And I always wanted to do something. And I was trying to figure out what can we do with our piece of land. And I actually started out on my parents' land, their back 2 acres. And that was a rough year. When they had lived there for over 30 years and had no idea there was so many deer out there until I planted sunflowers. And they ate them. They ate them all. I mean, there was just so many lessons in the dirt that year, spiritually and agriculturally, just how to um, steward your resources and your soil and work with the environment you're in. And so we finally, that year, that my husband's like, okay, fine, if this is really going to be a thing, um then let's move it up to the house. And that made it a lot easier because the kids could be playing with their toys. And so we're up here at the house, and we're not growing too much because there's been a lot of need to slow down, like with my son's behavior. Like sometimes he struggles with impulse, and there's a tray, like 120 something plug tray that can get toppled over with all types of seedlings in it, and you just have to like take a breath and grow as you can, because I'm the one that's always a joke of like 110% is what I do. And so it used to be like muscling things like, oh, you threw it. Of course you gave 110%. And it's funny because like my dad was one of my coaches, and that's what he'd say, like 110%, sister, 110%. And he even like ended up coaching me through my first two births because I
Oh.
was like, he coached my mom through natural labor. And I was struggling, and it was like Jeremy was getting concerned. And so my mom texted and was like, hey, we need you. And he comes in and was like, all right, let's have a baby. And I kid you not, it was like I was rounding third on my way home, 110%, 110%. So like when I said I'm going to do the flower farm, it was 110%. I did the website. Like we were going to sell, we were going to do subscriptions. Like we're going to do it the whole 9 yards. And so there was a lot of, I had to figure out like, yes, I can do this. I have all these passions and this energy to put into this, but I also like my family comes first. And so we've had to
Yeah.
slowly grow with that. So the second year, we didn't really sell anything unless someone came to me and was like, hey, can I buy a bouquet from you for this? Can I buy a bouquet for that? And because my husband's like, we gotta grow well. And which I thought was easy to do until the whole deer situation. And now we have a very obnoxious fence where we plant now, and the deer don't come in there. So with the way that he's babied the soil and the fence, the growing process is way easier. It's still just the growing with the family process. And so we grow slow, and that's been the biggest lesson I've had to learn, is that like, yes, they're successful, but there's also successful in the home. And so
Mhm.
last year I opened up subscriptions again. And I didn't open up too many because I had some that I was like, if I do really, really well with these, then this could open a lot of doors. And
Yeah.
so I had to like really, I have to check myself all the time because I just want to go and grow and like spread myself out way too thin. I've even put myself in like over volunteering rehab is what I call it, because I'll volunteer for too much.
Mhm.
And so, like focusing on our family, I've had to learn is like that doesn't mean that you're not successful. Like that's not a wrong thing to do. And so, this year, since we ended up having a sweet baby in the middle of the time that you're supposed to have like all your seedlings planted and ready to go, um, that we've really taken it slow, and we're now planting things, and we're just gonna take it as like, where do we want it to go, how do we want to grow it, and there's a lot of things that I would like to do, but I have to be very conscious of, okay, family, we gotta rope family into this as well,
Mhm.
because college Chelsea would just like run with it, do everything like all night long, stay up,
Mhm.
Mhm.
get up super early, like run on 3 hours of sleep, and
Oh, yeah.
and so but I just have to be very, very family conscious. And so I just use it as like, we're going to do a little bit of school, and then we're going to count seedlings for math, and we're going to plant them, and we're going to use the ruler and measure like how the depth of our hole that we're digging. And I just had to be very conscious and slow. So this year, I have had some people reach out like wanting bouquets at their businesses, and I've had to say like, okay, like it's gonna have to wait until June. And so I used to think that was like it was a failure that I hadn't reached the goal that I had set for myself by this point in this journey.
Mhm.
But now I also see that like the Lord knew what was happening. He knew that we were gonna have a
Mhm.
baby, and how overwhelmed I would be if I had all these subscriptions already in place and all of these customers already in place and events. Like I would love to go to events and have a trailer and do all that fun type of stuff. And I've learned a lot that it's going to be okay. Honestly, like from Kinsey, watching her boutique change and grow and evolve with her family and the focus on the things that are important with her family. And then Talia, you said in the podcast too, you've done the same thing with your
Mhm.
business. And so like knowing that that's okay has been the biggest thing. And so that's just what we're doing. We're just learning and growing, and I'm always checking my Instagram. I'm like, am I putting out a false perception that this is like a massive operation and we're putting out all these bouquets? And like, I want to be very real that we're growing slowly as we're growing as a family, because that's the most important thing that we're doing. And one day, would I love to hand it down to them? Yes. Would I want it to be huge? Yes. Would I want to buy the pot farm across the road because they they have all these massive greenhouses and this building that could basically be a rodeo arena? Like, yeah, that would be amazing because it's right across from us, beside my parents. Like, that would be the most ideal thing. But I know that that's not realistic for the time that we're in right now. There's a lot of maturity and things to grow on, and most importantly, like, it's the kids and the homeschooling and why we've decided to do this. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how we're running things right now, and that's like what this year is going to look like. We're planting flowers still. I bought some flowers from Florette when she had her big sale. I love zinnias. I think they're, or zinnias as some people say. I think they're amazing. Then they're perfect for Oklahoma. We have an
Mhm.
Oklahoma, a whole like species that are named Oklahoma, and they're smaller, and like they're perfect. If you're ever going to start with cut flowers, that's what you would start with.
Yep.
And they change colors. They'll like breed with each other and change colors, and these new colors will come. And I think that's really fascinating. And even though I hadn't planned on leaving the hospital, I was very burned out. And so even just like with
Yeah.
science in general, and then seeing all of that work in the soil, I found my love for science again through that. And so that's
That's
just what we're
awesome.
doing this year.
Well, I love that you touched on growing slowly because I feel like, from my own experience, when you overcommit yourself, you start to resent what you left. And I love that you're not letting that happen. You know, you're putting your focus on your family, but still getting to do what you love, just at a slower pace than you might like. And I think that's so important for us to remember because we live in such a social media world where we're seeing so much in information overload. We just assume that everyone on there has been an overnight success, and that's not true.
Mhm.
Um, like you mentioned, Florette, like she's been doing this a really
Oh,
long
yeah.
time, and it has taken her years and years and years to get to where she is now. So I love that you um, put emphasis on that. Another thing I wanted to touch on was your bouquets and your subscriptions because I am very like detail oriented. I love the little details almost as much, if not more, than the big product. And one thing that I love in your bouquets is that you focus on like Oklahoma agriculture crops and like your foliage and fillers, like wheat and sorghum and rye. Like it's very prominent in our state. And I like that you put all of that detail into your work and how personalized your bouquets and subscriptions are. Like they are very very like on brand with what you're doing. Um, so do you do this for every bouquet that you offer or just your subscription, or do people get to like pick and choose what they want in their bouquets, or how do you do that?
Well, also going back to having, children around and toddlers and things getting stomped sometimes. I don't do I don't do a lot of picking and choosing. It's just like we put on the website, it's farmer's choice because it's going to be what's available and what hasn't, had a rough
Yeah,
life. But yeah, as far as adding like the agricultural crops, that was part of the cover crop that my husband plants. Like, we had all this wheat, and I think wheat is just beautiful.
I do
Like,
too.
I
Yep.
just love it. And so I need to buy a sickle is what I want so I can go out there and harvest that wheat, more than just scissors when I have a bouquet.
Yeah.
But so like it started out with the wheat, and then he also had like these he has peas in the mix, and these peas have these beautiful little like purple flowers, and the oats, and it's something that grows well, and I feel like it's a tribute back to agriculture, because when I look at this flower farm, I do look at it from an agricultural like point of view. And one of my influences starting this was Lisa Mason Ziegler, and she offers all of these free workshops. And this was like the one good thing about your phones listening to you, because when I was like, who grows the flowers? Like, isn't that a flower farm? Like, who does that? Um, she started popping up on ads on like Facebook and Instagram. And so I found her, and she says like a lot of people quit after year 2 and 3 because it's hard work. Like it truly is hard work. And I think the difference is I looked into that as being like, this is a farm. And I looked at it from the
Mhm.
hard work standpoint, not like this is a beautiful like Instagram garden. Like this
Mhm.
was a farm. This is going to be hard work. There's going to be lessons. Like every single verse in the Bible that talks about soil and the seed is going to become extremely personal to you now. And you're going to see it from
Yeah.
a different point of view. And so, but yeah, like I wanted to keep, that focus in there, and we had all of those there, and I just realized like how beautiful they were, especially the sorghum when it changes colors and it goes to this really pretty
Mhm.
orange. And the sorghum is a funny story because it actually grew from birdseed, and my son was throwing out the seed for the birds, and he put it in an area that we hadn't really grown anything yet, and apparently the birds didn't like the sorghum, and so we had this massive sorghum patch, and I was like, this is gorgeous. And so I put
Yeah.
it in there, and I just feel like it's a back to your roots thing. And
Mhm.
that's something that's extremely important to me, as I gave you my whole family history, is like I feel like it's a part of everything that I do. And so that's where like that that part of ag's gonna be in there because that's what we're doing.
Well, and it goes with your name too, like stuff you would find in an Oklahoma pasture. So
Mhm.
I just love your attention to detail.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, because I used to be out in the pasture picking flowers because those are the only flowers I could pick, not the ones in grandma's gardens.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember getting in trouble once for touching hydrangeas, so, uh,
Yeah.
it's not a surprise that I'm out here picking flowers all the time now.
Plus, I think there's just something so beautiful about those flowers and plants that are just like a little bit wild, you know? Like
Mhm,
they're not like actual like native, but
mhm.
they're kind of more just like organic looking, just a little bit more
Mhm.
free and wild. Like I love that kind of style.
Right, yeah, I'm one that I don't really believe that there's weeds. There's just things growing where you don't want them to grow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I will be out in the pasture picking wildflowers. I have a sister-in-law who's, um, hun- gosh, she's like 13 years younger than me, and we would drive around on the buggy and we'd stop and she'd pick flowers. And I mean, that's where the pasture came from because I grew up picking flowers in the pasture.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it's always a thing like our flowers come from pastures that used to be the prairie, and it just, just who we
Mhm.
are in Oklahoma. That's just,
Special. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So what is a big goal that you have in mind? I mean, obviously we've talked about slowing down and keeping things in perspective, and I really did love what you said about kind of, I feel like in no other space or time of life than like motherhood do you feel this way, because like I totally related to you on the part where you're talking about like your college self would go at it like 110% because that's exactly how I am with most things. I think of something and I'm like, I'm going to do it. And then I like have all these grand plans for it, but then it's like for some reason, like I can't figure out how to do it with my kids or my current life situation or whatever, and then I get frustrated. And so it's just keeping things in perspective. But let's just say like down the road, your kids kind of grow up a little bit. What's a big goal that you have for Pasture Petals?
I would really like to have multiple locations and serve stay-at-home moms, so they could have like their little flower patch that they could grow with their kids and use it in their schooling, or just have the toddlers at home and use it for that time. And then mom can also feel like have a little bit of an identity, because sometimes it does get lost in motherhood, and a little bit of that like being successful. And of course that would take a lot of growth to do that. That's like the big goal. But I would love to do more like show events. Like I would love to go to OYE, like our huge
Mhm.
animal livestock show. I would love to go there. Like, and there's another flower farmer that's Slick Chick Blooms. Like her family owns a
Mhm.
feed store, and they don't just own the feed store, they grow all their feed. Like they grow it all. And so she's been around that, and we've talked about that so much. Like that's where our heart is. That's where we want to be, is show these girls that are like, how do I fit into this agricultural lifestyle other than, a farmer's wife? Like, what can I do to have my own little thing? And so I think that would just be amazing to show up in all of those areas and say, hey, this is something you can do. And then also be like there for all the little boys that want to buy flowers for the girls, and and just have a good fun time. Like those are some of my most favorite memories. Was just being at the livestock barn, and so that's where I would want to see Pasture Petals at, and just to grow and serve those moms is really like that's where my heart is.
I love that, and I love your heart to serve. Kind of switching gears just a little bit, but not much. But I love that you not only advocate for homeschooling at our state capital, because you've filled me in multiple times on bills. You've homeschooled and been in the game way longer than I have, so you kind of keep me up to date on like Oklahoma homeschool laws, and I appreciate that. But also for Oklahoma's flower farmers, tell us a little bit about the things that you've done up there regarding that aspect.
Right, and that's another thing that like my mom was one that she wasn't afraid to reach out to those officials, whoever would be, if there was a situation, or again, like with the homeschool bill and things like that. So she taught me that like those people aren't like untouchable. You can talk to them, like they're there to serve
Mhm.
you. And then also in 4-H, like there's 4-H day at the Capitol, and that was another
Yeah.
thing that I loved, absolutely loved
Yeah.
4-H day at the Capitol. And so whenever like there's homeschool day at the Capitol, you go up there, and it's just making your presence known, talking to them about those things. And then when I saw that there was Ag Day at the Capitol, I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And I reached out to a few of the Oklahoma flower farmers, especially those who had been around for a long time. And we sent out surveys to everyone. Like we got all the data, we made all the banners that you could make, and we went out there, and it was an amazing experience. A lot of people didn't even know that flower farming was really becoming a thing in Oklahoma. And when we went last year, we surveyed, and there was a little over 40 flower farms in Oklahoma. And so
Wow.
it was amazing, and we got to talk to a lot of our legislators, and then there was a lot of people there with other agricultural groups, and so it was again the younger people, and we handed out flowers. We had at that time, like in April, as we had tons of ranunculus, and we
Mhm.
handed those out, and we made lapel pins for our legislators, and it was an amazing time, and we kind of opened everyone's eyes to like this is happening. This is an up and coming industry in the ag world, and we hope that it continues to be that way. And we have a lot of flower farmers that came from different ag departments. There's one like Petal Pushers. She used to be with the forestry department, and now she
Mhm.
works with another department in Oklahoma. And so we're just working on getting our name out there and learning like where do we fit in, because we're kind of an oddball when it comes to like laws and tax and all that stuff. Like flower farming kind of has to find their place, and so we're getting that worked on. And like farm tax for flower farmers, we advocated for that. And it's just a lot of fun. I just love educating people and being at the booth, educating people, talking to people, meeting people from all across the state. People would ask like, "Oh, well, I'm from here. Like, is there a flower farmer from here?" And we would give them information about this other flower farmer. And so we have a really wonderful flower farming community in Oklahoma, and we're all one big team. We want each other to be successful, even though most of us haven't even ever met in person. It's kind of that
Yeah.
Instagram thing, like reach out and be like, "Hey, I had someone in this area that wanted a bouquet, or someone over here," and just checking in on each other and just cheering each other on. And so we did that at Ag Day at the Capitol, and it was a hit. It was so much fun.
It looked amazing. I need to get you in contact with my cousin. She has a flower farm in near Ponca City, and her she has a subscription now too, but her business is called Sown, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
beautiful. But yeah, I love that you um invest in so many other areas of your business, not just like, okay, I'm growing this, I'm going to sell it and I'm going to make money. Like, you really and truly care about what you do, and it just seems to like flow into every other area of your life.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I kind of do that with everything. Like, I mean, here's who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And a lot of it, again, since from that upbringing and that 4-H, and I can just like, when it comes to our homeschool, like planning things, planning an event, like, well, that goes into planning our homeschool. And so I don't know, just how I do. So I really appreciate that you see that.
Well, and I love, well, you're setting an example for your kids too, kind of
Right.
like your mom did for you. Like, they're seeing, their mom do big things too. She's like taking time out to school them and spend quality time with them, but she's also working on something that she's passionate and she loves, and she's taking it to the next level to advocate for that
Mhm.
in her state. And I think that's so important. And it's something that I forget oftentimes. Like you said, they work for us and they're not untouchable. We can go talk to them. Um, Kind of speaking on like tax and stuff. Like, I didn't even think about flower farming and tax rolls and farm tax and stuff, because I'm sure that is seen as like a hobby, or, hobby gardening, when it's an actual agriculture product, it's a business. So that's just something too that I'm glad that you mentioned for our listeners.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned people thinking that it's a hobby thing, because we don't grow on very much land, like acreage wise,
Hmm.
unless like there's Bear Creek and Stillwater, and they are a huge, huge flower farm, and
Yeah.
they've been growing for like years and years and years, and they have lots of employees, and they're the ones we all look up to. But everyone else, like, you can do so much with just a quarter of an acre when it comes to
Hmm.
flower farming, because you're cutting and you're sowing again, and it's just it's a lot different. So when we made our banners, we specifically put how much square feet was being farmed in Oklahoma, because that's a really big number. But
Yeah.
because we knew our audience, we knew if we put acres up there, they're gonna be like, okay,
Well, that's not very much.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you can only put like, what, 5 cows on that? Like,
I know. Everything is measured in cows.
So, what are some lessons that you've learned from being a homeschool mom, a homesteader, or flower farmer? Just kind of anything that stands out to you.
again, the whole it's okay to be slow. And I mean, I really think the biggest lesson that I have learned is my home is my mission field. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
the most important place that I'm ever going to be an influence at, ever, ever in my whole life. And that's the place that I'm going to be held accountable for. So whether it's, homeschooling or homesteading, everything I'm doing, like you said, I'm an example to the kids, like how I handle
Mm-hmm.
that, how I've worked like hours on getting this sourdough to make, and it doesn't make, it falls flat. Or, it's, all like the Oklahoma drought comes and things just start shriveling, and it really doesn't matter when you water them because it's so hot. You're just going to burn it
Mm-hmm.
all up. Those things happen, and just like how I handle myself. Yes, my mom taught me that, but then the realization that I'm the mom and the example now. And that has
Mm-hmm.
been the biggest thing. And because that's who I learned from. And it's very humbling to be like, oh, I'm the influence. I'm the one that's going to mold these little people. And you can't do it on your own. Like I said, like, this
Mm-hmm.
is our mission field. Like, I have to lean solely onto the Lord in every single aspect of how I handle myself and what's wise
Mm-hmm.
for our family, and what's good for our kids. Like, is this too much responsibility or is it not enough responsibility? It's just a lot of growing, but being that influence on them and being that example has been like the biggest lesson I've learned.
Amen. That's so good.
I don't know if you've like, I know your older son, like he's kind of getting to that age where my daughter's a similar age, but they start saying things and it's like, oh, you're saying that because I said that to you. And sometimes it's not
Yeah.
the nicest thing,
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so like those experiences are the humbling ones where you're like,
Right.
oh man, like I gotta watch how I phrase this or my tone of voice because she's just giving it right back to me. You know?
Right. Yeah. Or if you see them beating themselves up over something that wasn't
Ugh,
successful, that's when
yes.
I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
It's a different level of responsibility when it's your turn to parent.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we've kind of touched on a lot of our questions, Chelsea. Is there anything else before we move on to rapid fire questions that you want our listeners to know? And maybe go ahead and tell us where they can find you or get a subscription or where they can keep up with you on social media.
Okay, so the farm website is pasturepetals.com. And I have a blog that I've kind of worked on there that I'm working on growing. We have an email list. And then you can also find us on Instagram at pasture underscore Petals, okay. And then on Facebook, we're at Pasture Petals. There's a lot more activity on Instagram. I'm working on getting over to the Facebook more, but that's where you can find us. And you don't be shy. Message. We have lots of people message about weddings and things like that. And if it's within season, then we'll see. And we don't have greenhouses, so if it's not like prime end of May, beginning of August, sometimes depending on how hot the summer gets. Then we're not a year-round farm. I will say that because we don't have greenhouses. But yeah, please reach out. Or if you're somewhere that you hear this podcast and you're like, well, I don't know if there's a flower farm in my area, let me know. I'll find you one. And we love doing that for each other.
Yeah, you're a very good resource for flower farms. I don't know. Do you know? Well, you know my friend Whitley.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how we got connected, wasn't
Yes.
it? Yes, that's
Yes.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Whitley and I
So,
met at OSU. She discipled me while I was there. And
oh
then
gosh, I
and then
love her.
she moved to Ada and she bought me baby shower gifts from this cute boutique called Farm Girl, and
Yes.
I've been following forever, buying gifts here and there.
Yeah,
So,
gosh, it's been so long that it kind of runs together, and sometimes I
mhm.
just forget, but I love that. That is such a positive thing about social media and small business, and it connects you with people you wouldn't meet otherwise. And we'll be sure to put all your links in the show notes so that way people can find you. But on our show at the end, we like to ask just a few lighthearted rapid fire questions, and they're just all fun. So the first one being, what are you reading right now?
Oh gosh. Right now I'm reading, hold on, it's right here. Essential Oils for Pregnancy, Birth, and Babies. So this is my first baby that I've been crunchy per se with. And so like still as an RN, I'm like, what's safe? What's not safe? I don't know. And I was asking my midwife a bunch of questions. She's like, okay, here's this book. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Oh, that sounds
So
like a
I'm
good
learning
one.
in that. And I like naturopathic medicine. Like I could totally like go on a whole
Mm.
conversation about that. It's really amazing. And so that's like another thing in the ag world that I'm like, oh, let's grow a medicine garden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
herbs and yeah,
Yes.
Sagebrush or blue stem?
I know
Mm,
I shall choose.
gosh, that's hard because in Oklahoma we have both. Probably blue stem. That's what we have out here. But I think they're both pretty.
Yeah, they are. Favorite part of being a homesteader or flower farmer per se?
I love the freedom that it gives you, whether it's making like growing your own food, having your own food supply, or if you're a homesteading homeschool parent, like you're home and you get to decide what you're going to do, and we're going to plant today, go to a museum tomorrow. Like it's just a whole bunch of freedom that I didn't have like from being in college and in a dorm room or an apartment, those things like that. Like as soon as I got a house, I was like, oh, we need to put the flower bed out. And so I like worked really hard on the flower bed and then found out that the landlord unhooked the outside water, so it just died. But
Oh, no.
but that's like it's the freedom of just like being outside and doing like what your heart wills and what your family needs.
I love that. All right. What is one thing you have on your bucket list?
So gosh, one thing. I think it would probably be like visiting the northeast side of the country. Like I want to see the old historical areas. Like I am a big
Mhm.
history person. And I like we've always said like we're gonna just go down the East Coast, visit all of those areas, just go down the East Coast and see the history. Because Washington, DC, I've been there a couple times and like it just takes my breath away, just the history and the wisdom that went into every detail of every corner of the buildings. Even the curbs are fancy there. Like there was so much thought into every single thing that built this country. And so I would love to see like Plymouth Rock and Jamestown and all of that. Like
Yeah.
that's a huge thing on my bucket list.
I feel like when you become like a homeschool mom, you like develop this whole like obsession with history.
Well, I think you finally appreciate it when you
Right.
didn't in school. Like,
Right.
it's like, you guys don't understand how cool this really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're like teaching it, you have to like kind of relearn and refresh everything. And it's like, I've always loved history, but it's like now I'm like seriously borderline obsessed. And I'm totally with you.
Well,
Like, I would go to all of like the historical towns and cities and see all of the sites. And I just think it would be so cool.
well, it's truly, like you said, it's truly amazing the detail. I mean, even looking at the Declaration of Independence, like how much it covers and like keeps us safe
Yeah.
and the freedoms it gives. It's crazy. Okay, next one. Very important. What's your favorite steak cut and how do you like it cooked?
Oh boy. Oh, okay. I'm definitely, it depends on where I am. Medium rare, maybe rare, a little bit. I mean, I don't like it mooing still, but probably probably prime rib.
Mm, love prime
That's a
rib.
good one.
All right. What is your favorite wildflower?
So it's definitely an Indian paintbrush.
Yeah.
Yes.
I made many, many Indian paintbrush bouquets, but our state wildflower is an Indian blanket, and you don't
Mhm.
see very many of those. Like I remember vividly, we had one grow in the pasture one time, and it was like I picked it. I probably shouldn't have. Probably should have let it go to seed, but it was like it was so exciting. But I loved the Indian paintbrush.
I remember growing up, we had a lot of Indian blanket over in our area, and I don't see them much anymore either.
Mm.
So, yeah, we need to start finding them and letting them go to seed and try to grow some more.
Yeah, put markers out and be like, "This is where it was.
Yeah.
Dig up the dirt."
Okay, log cabin or old farmhouse?
Probably old farmhouse. Definitely. That's my mom has always been obsessed with old things, and so definitely old farmhouses.
Mhm.
All right. What is your favorite recipe or meal to make?
Oh gosh. Um, hmm. Probably one that everyone eats would be deer steaks. I don't know, like, I mean, we have lots of deer meat, but the kids love fried deer steaks. Like they would just sit there
Hmm.
and eat those and eat nothing else for dinner. And so that's always a good win. I like making that because which I don't really make it. My husband does the deer cooking. Because I feel like I always overcook them. But I'll make all the sides and everything, but the kids eat it. They eat it. They eat all of it,
Hmm.
and I love that
Yeah.
accomplishment. Like, yes, like they got a lot of protein. Their bellies are full. Like, fantastic.
Yeah. My kids also, that's like their favorite thing. It's just steak of any kind, but
Right.
we usually eat deer or elk, so they love it.
Have you ever had an animal that had a big impact on your life or was particularly memorable?
Um, Probably the basset hound that we have now, just
Oh.
because she was born the day that my great grandma passed away. And so she's the one that she grew up in Perkins, the family with the homestead. She knew Frank Eaton, OSU's Pistol Pete, the real man.
That's so cool.
Yes, I mean, it was amazing. And so she lived to be 98 years old, and the day she passed away was the day that our Basset Hound was born. And she is the most amazing dog. Like, yes, like she has the bark, and sometimes it gets a little rough to listen to because she barks quite a bit, but she's so protective of the kids. Like she really does, like, even if it's a turtle in the yard, she like stands in front of it and barks at the kids and lets them know, like, don't come over here. And like, I don't know, it's just sweet that the day that she was born was the day that Grandma Essie left us, and she has such a good protective spirit over the kids. Like, it's
Aw.
just really super sweet. She's a good little dog.
We used to have a Basset Hound, and I loved him so much. Same was Copper, but they definitely think they're big dogs.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, she's not afraid of anything. I mean, she'll bark. She's not aggressive, but she will bark at you and let you know, like, don't come any further.
All right, share one random fact about you.
I I mill my own bread, or mill my own flour, and we make our own bread. That's
Awesome.
that's something that I started a few years ago, and I've grown from a KitchenAid little mill that goes like on the front of your KitchenAid to now my mom got me one of those Nutrimills. And so that's something that I don't do it every single time I make bread. But we do that a lot, and I really love doing that. There's just something about like making your own flour and then making your own bread, and it's an amazing taste, and it's just fresh, and you can feel it in your body, like that it's not processed, and you don't have any of that just like kind of like gluten hangover or anything like that. So I've been doing that for a little while now, and it's kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, that's a goal. That's a goal of mine. Because I bake my own bread. We do all like homemade bread, but
Hmm.
I don't have a good mill. So that's my biggest problem, because I've tried and I like ruined I ruined the one that I had. So, gotta find a good one.
Right, yeah. I mean, the KitchenAid one we had, it served its purpose, but I could tell like the bread was just like kind of heavier because
Mhm.
the flour wasn't as fine as it is with the Nutri-Mill now. So, but then the KitchenAid one, we use that one for coffee. My husband grinds his own coffee with the KitchenAid mill, so
Oh, there
Oh,
you
it's good.
go.
awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Do you have anything else, Talia, that you want to add in?
I don't think so. I think she gave us a lot of good information, and I'm excited for our followers to go and check out your page and see what you have going on.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun, and I'm excited for this new series you guys are doing. I'm very interested to see everyone that you interview and hear their stories.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I love your story, and I'm so excited for you and your flower business, and I know it's just going to be an amazing thing for you and your family. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.